Am I a reviewer? Am I a killer? Let's talk about Tornado.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are back, the Eye of the Storm podcast. So, today we are going to be reviewing Tornado. But before we get into that, you already know what time it is, movie recommendation time. So, guys, best recent thing that we've seen.
So I watched The Amateur, which actually came out earlier this year. It's an action movie based on sort of like a CIA decoder who has a situation where his wife goes to London and is killed by an attack. He sort of kind of like blackmails the CIA to train him up so that he's able to go and find the people that killed his wife, pretty much. So, kind of your typical action movie. Man goes on a revenge killing spree because someone killed his wife. But I thought it was pretty cool. It was interesting the way that he used his sort of kind of unique skill set as a decoder or whatever, like whatever his job was in this to sort of go about his mission. Action was cool. The sort of cast, whatever, was pretty much standard. That's just what you would expect in this movie. I don't think it does anything super unique for the genre, but it's just a good, competent, and fairly entertaining movie to watch if you don't really have anything else to watch, to be honest. Kind of fell off a little bit towards some of the latter parts of the movie, but I think overall it was enjoyable.
Yeah, I watched that when it was in cinemas, and I was unimpressed, but entertained. It's kind of my bottom line on it. Like, it's fine, it's okay, it works, and it's not remarkable in any way. Was kind of my takeaway from that. There was like a long weekend when this came out, so I watched this, Warfare, and I forget what the third one was. I think wasn't Mission Impossible, right? No, that came long after.
Sinners?
I don't know what
Was it Sinners?
might have been. I think Sinners was the third one, yeah. And of those three, The Amateur was the worst one, mostly because the other two were so good. So if I had to recommend movies coming out that weekend, this is the last one I would recommend. But if it just pops up on your it's probably on Prime now. That's how you watched it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's fine if you like somewhat formulaic action movies with a gimmick that are competent. This is totally fine.
Yeah, pretty much. I do actually need to watch Warfare at some point, so that's on my list.
Yeah, that's not my recommendation this week, but I'll just recommend it in general. That is really good.
So, I watched a Netflix French movie called KO, which is about a former MMA fighter who had to save a guy's son who he accidentally killed in the ring. So he didn't kill the son, but he killed his father. His son gets involved with a crime gang in Marseille, and then they end up pretty much trying to kill him by the end of it. And yeah, so he's pretty much sent by the mother to pretty much try and save him. The movie was pretty good. I like French movies. I'd say I think most people will have like an average viewing experience with this one, but for me, because I like French movies a lot, I did find it entertaining. The story's pretty simple, but yeah, it's a simple movie, but it's a fun movie with like good action scenes. So I think that's just the main like selling point of it. The former fighter is actually I think he's an actual MMA fighter, UFC fighter. I'd definitely recommend it.
So the best thing I watched this week is I rewatched Betas. I must have seen this one 3 or 4 times now. It's one of the early Amazon streaming series. They made one season of it back in 2013. And what it essentially is a group of developers in early 2010s Silicon Valley who are trying to get an app off the ground. So they're looking for investors. They're trying to get users. They're trying to build this app there, and they're kind of struggling through the kind of the trials and tribulations of being a startup in Silicon Valley. It's kind of remarkable how flawed this series is, and I still like it. A lot of plots don't really go anywhere, and a lot of the characters are really one-dimensional, but they kind of have a charm. If you can only watch one series about Silicon Valley, watch Silicon Valley. But if you can watch 2, this is a good second pick, I think. It's not nearly as smart. Silicon Valley doesn't have nearly as much to say. It's more like a comedy drama that happens to be set in Silicon Valley, and it's just a really comfortable watch with a couple of good moments here and there that I think is much better than I think its reputation warrants, because this kind of just disappeared into streaming, and I've never seen anybody talk about it. But every 2 or 3 years, it kind of pops up in my recommendations, and then I watch an episode, and before I know it, I've seen the entire season, which is 11 episodes. It's very difficult to say something truly positive about the show. It's more like holistically, it comes together. It's an enjoyable watch.
All right, cool. Well, looks like it's time for the main event. Tornado. Daniel, may you please give the people a mini synopsis?
So, Tornado is a period piece action drama revenge movie set in 1790s Scotland. It follows Japanese puppeteers who are traveling the land, and when they have a run-in with a group of thieves who have stolen a bunch of gold from, I think, from a church, they steal that gold from the thieves, who then go after them to get the gold back. And from there, a revenge plot unfolds in which the daughter named Tornado takes revenge on these thieves for their actions. So what did we think of Tornado?
Do you know what's funny is in your synopsis, it feels like you spoiled the movie just because of how long it takes to get to the revenge part of it and how they sort of kind of slowly unfold why Tornado is running away from the men that are after her. To be honest, this movie is probably one that I would have expected not to have enjoyed, just because with how kind of like slow and drawn out most of the first part of the movie is. But for whatever reason, I kind of enjoyed this one. I was like quite intrigued as to, you know, one, why she was running away from everyone. Two, I like the ruthlessness of the villain in this. You could see that he had like a rapport with other people that were within the community, but if you crossed him, he was, you know, pretty ruthless and would just essentially just like burn everything down just to get what was his. I liked how like the story was unfolding. I liked just like learning a little bit more about Tornado, the people that were after her, her father, and the dynamic between them two as the story was unfolding. I actually think the weakest part was the revenge part of it, and when she starts going on a killing spree. I think that's when I kind of was like, okay, this movie's done for me, and I was kind of checked out. But everything beforehand was quite intriguing. It was quite interesting and quite entertaining for the most part. Not in like the most spectacular way, more so that this is probably a movie that I probably wouldn't have ended up watching. I did watch it for this, and I thought it was like good enough for the experience, pretty much. So yeah, it's my non-spoilery thoughts.
I'd like a chance at rebuttal to your review, because I don't think we watched the same movie. It's like,
Go on.
so first of all, I saw the trailer a few months ago, and I like quirky ideas. I like small movies that just have an idea and do it. And Samurai in Scotland, just as an idea, it's interesting. And I like it when small movies do something interesting, and I always hope they succeed at that. When I walked out of the theater, I was kind of debating with myself whether this was actually the worst movie I'd seen all year. And then I went through our playlist of our reviews, and I think it is. All the other movies had at least something positive. I think The Monkey might be worse, but that one was more intentional. Like, that one had a plan. I just didn't like the plan. And this one just was nonsense from start to finish. I did not like the character. I did not like the revenge. I did not like the setting. I did not like the villains. I think it's really poorly made. It's probably the worst made movie I've seen all year. Just because how characters are introduced, how they're characterized, how the conflict unfolds, how scenes are set up, how they're structured. There's a whole lot of stuff where just continuity and logic is just broken in this. And there's so much detail in this that it's kind of hard. Like, it's easy to kind of gloss over it and kind of just go with it. But there's a scene in which Tornado realizes that her father hid the gold somewhere up high, right? So that where the thieves couldn't find it. And somebody 2 rows over said out loud at maximum volume, "How?" Because it's logically it's impossible. Like if you look at like the way the scene is constructed, without going into any kinds of spoilers just quite yet, if you just look at how the scene unfolds, it is physically impossible for the father to have done this. And somebody going into open rebellion at that point in the audience. And I said, "Yep, I'm with you." I was thinking the same thing. I just didn't say it out loud. It's my review.
Well, it felt like watching a university film. Now, I felt 60-40 towards the film in terms of like 60% I liked it, 40% I definitely appreciated it for its premise and just how unique it was. That's definitely just something which I appreciate it for, and I like watching movies like this because the way that it was shot as well. Either it was shot in a way where they were just trying to accommodate the budget because you could tell it was low budget, or they were trying to be like very artsy with it. So I was like, okay, hopefully they're not just trying to be. No, hopefully they're not trying to be artsy. It's just that they're trying to, they're just, they're working with what they got. I'm hoping it was in that regard because if they could have did better and they chose they chose to kind of do that style of cinema, then I'm like, yeah, that's trash. However, while watching the film, I was trying to understand exactly what the film wanted to achieve because I was like, okay, like, do you know what I'm saying? So I'm still 60-40, so I'm still more on the side that I liked it mainly because these type of like low budget type of uni film type of films, I don't know, I just like watching it. Like I'm trying to watch Terrify. I think it's called Terrify. I'm trying to watch that as well, and I'm going to watch it. I promise I'm going to watch it. I just need to get through 1 and 2 because Daniel, the way he spoke about 1 is how it was kind of made it off point for me because he just said it was one of the worst things he saw, I think. But
Just to protect my reputation here, I didn't say Terrifier was a bad movie. I said I didn't like watching it because it's uncomfortable and revolting on purpose, and I just didn't get any enjoyment out of that. I'm not saying Terrifier is a bad movie.
Okay, yeah, apologies, my bad. But so when it comes to these type of films, I definitely appreciate it most. I think the reason why I liked it is because I appreciate that it was a unique idea and I appreciate what they were trying to do, and it was such a wacky idea. It felt like watching Peaky Blinders mixed with a bit of Gangs of London, mixed with a bit of Samurai Jack, mixed a bit with a Western film, a Western feel. So it was crazy what was going on. I was thinking in terms of just the idea of it. It just I was just trying to understand, okay, what are they trying to do? Is like, did they just make this film for fun? And there's not really like, it's just a revenge movie where there's not like really anything going on? Or did I miss something? Do you know what I'm saying? So I definitely do hear from where both of you guys are coming from because in a way it is terrible, but I appreciate the film as well because it's just kind of whack, like the way that they infuse all these ideas into one. I'm like, yo, that's like kudos to you. That's pretty sick. And the fact that you shot it, that, you know what I'm saying? So if this was a university film, I would have said, okay, I'm 70-30 because I would have appreciated more. I was like, okay, they tried and this film, the idea is pretty cool. But because I feel like it was made by an actual production company, I'm like, you know what I'm saying? So, but I'm still 60-40. I'm still 60-40 towards I like it. However, like I said, I just didn't understand what the purpose behind it was. So, yeah.
Let's talk about it.
I'm not going to do a strong defense of this movie because I don't think I liked it enough to be doing strong defense for this movie. I definitely, when the movie started and we were doing this whole slow walking pace thing while she was running away, I was a bit like, okay, what kind of movie have I walked into? But in that moment, having experienced the surfer a couple of weeks before and just sitting there and absolutely hating my experience with the surfer, I was like, do you know what? Let me try and get as much enjoyment out of this movie and get the enjoyment where I can from this movie, which is why I think I had a bit more of a better experience than some. I know Jonathan actually quite liked it. Probably same ratio that I did, but I think it was just like a conscious effort that I will try to see as much of the positives as I can in this movie because it does feel like a university film. It does feel you do feel that it's very low budget, especially the whole like scene where she gets to the manor and she's sort of trying to like get in and stuff like that, and like 1 minute they're like the maid's there, and then you're like, okay, who the hell is like meant to be in this house, whatever. I was very confused. I was unsure as to what was going on. But again, I said, let me try and find the enjoyment I can from this. So
And did
then
you?
when the gang showed up and they were inside and they were kind of just like throwing their weight about essentially, and then when you had that one guy who was a bit of a defect from the gang who felt that he was sort of pulling more weight, doing more for the gang than everyone else was, but the shares were being split equally, which he didn't think was fair. So he was being a little bit conniving. I was like, okay, I can kind of like that a little bit. I can see that your face going.
No, it's the reason I'm smirking is because I was trying to remember the name of the character, and in my mind, so the villain is called Sugarman, and the guy who's kind of butting up against him is his son, right? So, but in my head, I kept calling the character Sugar Daddy because sugar, and he's a father and something. That's where my head was.
Sugar
So
daddy,
continue.
crazy.
No, I think that was like kind of the interesting part for me. Also, I liked when they revealed that Sugar Man had some type of wound to him as well. It was like, okay, this is interesting. I like, how did he get that? And I was like, okay, I'm intrigued to find out a little bit more because he was kind of walking around throwing his weight about, but he's injured. How did that happen? Who's this girl? Why are they after her, etc. I was like, okay, movie, tell me more, please. I mean, it answered the questions I had as to, I mean, not who the gang were, but what their deal was they robbed some money. The money that they robbed ended up getting robbed from them, and they blamed this girl, and they were trying to get it back from her essentially. I was like, okay, you answered my question there. And who the girl was this like young girl who was like doing shows with her father, who was like maybe who was kind of getting fed up with the lifestyle that they were living, try to be a little bit adventurous and have a little bit more money so that they can maybe afford more things or do a little bit better than what they were doing, and then all some of the consequences that came from that raised a big question mark at the end as well as to when she throws the money in the river, because she kind of sees all the pain and suffering that's come from trying to obtain this money, and she's lost her
Let me stop you
father.
right there.
Go on.
Why do you think that's the reason? Like
Why do I think
what
what?
happens in the movie that leads you to that conclusion?
To which conclusion?
So basically, there's a whole bunch of back and forth where they keep stealing the gold from each other, right? And she ends up with the gold, and she kind of sneaks away in the morning before she goes on a big revenge spree, and she takes she takes a fistful of the gold coins, throws them on the ground, kind of just as a statement. We later find out that she had kept like maybe 10%, like a smaller bag of it. She kept enough money to live on for a while, and then most of it she dumps in the lake. And then she goes on her revenge killing spree. Why do you interpret that as she realizes the money is just the source of all evil, and so she has to get rid of it?
I don't think she sees money as a source of valuable. I think she sees this set of like cash that they
That's
have
what I mean. Yeah.
or gold. You kind of feel it in certain scenes. So when her circus friend dies, that knew her father and knew her, when they die, and she sees that the whole sort of kind of caravan lot or whatever it's called has been set on fire. Also, when the little boy is dead and she's sort of shedding some tears, and again she's like realizing what one small mistake she made has like impacted everyone, and then of course like her father and stuff like that. So it's like all of that where she's seeing the effect of her actions, and she's seeing how everything's played out because of her trying to take this money. But where I was confused was, if you're going to throw the money away, and if you're going to spit at the money while you throw it away because it's disgust you and you don't want anything to do with it, why do you then have a
Why
fistful of
did
it?
she?
Like, why did you keep some? Like, it didn't make sense. Why did you keep
Yeah,
some?
she didn't have to steal the money in the first place, and she could have given the money back by the time the thieves caught up with them, right? Or they could have just dumped it on
Yeah.
the side of the road, saying, "Hey, here's your money back. We don't want this trouble," right? And instead, they engage in this big conflict over it, right? So I don't buy that they were just innocent victims in this, and like it's basically two groups of thieves messing with each other, kind of.
Yeah.
The
Well,
only one who doesn't fit into that is
her
the father.
yeah, I would say her less so as being like the innocent victim, but the circus people who
Yeah,
had their whole livelihood burnt to the ground. I think they were innocent victims. I think the little boy is probably more sympathetic in terms of, you can probably apply a little bit of a backstory to him, that in that time period probably didn't have a lot of money, poor family, and is having to steal and rob from people to try and survive. Don't know how he took the gold bag away from the guys, especially with how heavy it is, how small he is, and how much noise it probably would have made. It makes no sense how he was able to get away with the bags whatsoever. But he's probably a little bit more sympathetic. And on her end, they tried to add the whole conflict that she had with her father about, not wanting to have to do all of these shows that they've been doing. And you can imagine like how repetitive it's got, how they're having to do this every so often just to just live. And maybe she wanted a different life for herself, and she's less so sympathetic, but you can kind of reason with why she'd want to, why she'd see the opportunity and think she could capitalize off of it.
yeah. So there's a whole bunch of stuff in here where I take issue. Like, I agree that a lot of this is what the movie was trying to do. But my main issue with the movie is just how it doesn't. So I'm not even sure where to start exactly. So, like, one of the really big things is just the way all of this is told, right? So, I still don't know whether she was actually part of that troop whose caravans were being burnt down, because we don't see them travel together in the beginning, but they seem to know each other in the end. And when she's hiding in the mansion, which also seems like is a very long sequence, like it's long enough and detailed enough that it should mean something, but it doesn't seem to add up other than she's running away from them and hiding. As she's hiding in the mansion, one of the thieves says something like, "Oh, there's a traveling troop across the lake. She might go to them, so let's go there first." Something like that. This is like an example, and I can give like you can give like 10 others, but this is like an example of how it's not clear what people know and why they make certain choices and how it all fits together. And it kind of seems to all just happen, because by the end of it, they've not spent very much time with it. She goes to the strong man and just hides in his wagon, and they seem to know each other. But it didn't seem clear to me that she's actually part of the troop, because in all previous sequences, she and her father are traveling alone. And I don't think they make reference to the troop. They're not saying they're meeting up with them. They're not saying they will catch up with them or something. I don't know. Did I miss something?
The only thing that I can maybe think of is that the strongman it was like a painting of the samurai on his wall, which is almost like a representation of her father, or like maybe was of her father, or like, kind of like signifies that it maybe was like a gift from her father or something like that. I don't know. You're having to do a lot of explaining for the movie. So like one thing that I can possibly think of is that they maybe used to travel with this group and maybe broke off and sort of sectioned off and started to do their own thing. The other thing that was a little bit confusing, now that you've mentioned it, was you had the guy say, "Oh, like there's this sort of kind of like circus troupe across the river, and then maybe she's gone there." It's not Sugarman's idea, but Sugarman knows of it and knows the people there and is familiar with them. So it's like, if you're familiar with them and you're familiar with her father, then you should know of the connection, and that should be one of the places that you are looking as well in trying to find her.
And this seems a strange thing to be ambiguous about, right? Like, if it's just a chance encounter and they have solidarity because they're both traveling performers, that's fine. If they know each other and have been traveling together for a long time and therefore they care about each other, that's also fine. But why are you not clear about this, like as a movie? How hard would it have been to have a couple of lines or a scene that clarifies how they fit together? And I was just confused the entire time. Like, it's not clear. It just, like, stuff kind of just seems to happen.
I thought they did know each other because obviously they were all travelers. I assumed,
but they don't see each other and they say, "Oh, like I recognize you from 3 towns ago" or something. You know what I mean? Like, they don't seem to have a reaction to each other.
And I thought that scene was gonna kind of be answered, as in, because like the way that it started, it felt a bit disjointed. So I thought, okay, so like it is setting, like they're showing different timelines, and it's all gonna connect. However, it didn't. I do understand where you're coming from, and I think all of this was intentional, because no way, like, because in the back of my mind, I was saying to myself, I don't know how this has a cinema release. It feels like, those films that you would find on Amazon Prime, like, what I'm saying, you just have to look through the clutter and like it's part of the clutter. Even though I did say I do appreciate this film that comes, okay, a film like this has a cinema release, I appreciate it. But if I saw this film on Amazon, I don't think I would appreciate it as much, because it just felt so disjointed. I thought with that scene in particular, they were gonna kind of show something which showed they all knew each other, but they didn't. So then I just came to the conclusion that, okay, so because they're all travelers, and I'm sure, obviously, because it is random having like, Japanese puppeteers in 1790s Britain. So I'm like, okay, so sure, like their equipment, everything that they have, I'm sure they must have got it from them, or I'm saying, they all work together. So I'm sure I came to that conclusion. Okay, they all know each other already from that thought. But yeah, I do understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, and I just don't get the indication that they have in fact met each other. They kind of act like it, but also kind of not. And it's more like this is a symptom or an example of the movie just getting stuff like this wrong, where it's simply not clear about things that should be clear. And another aspect of this is when they do go to the performers, this computer game mechanic where characters have like an arc of vision and they will only react to you when you're in the cone of vision. That's how the scene is written. The characters completely ignore each other and don't acknowledge each other, and there's like armed bandits walking into camp and nobody reacts. It takes a whole lot before there's like this guy who is supposedly the leader kind of comes out of his wagon. He has an entire conversation with his wife first. There's one guy who's throwing knives, and you would think if anybody in this is gonna put up a fight, it's gonna be him, and he just gets shot. And then the strong man walks up to somebody, flexes his muscles, and then also gets shot in the back. I think he takes an arrow into the back. And as this entire scene is kind of winding up, characters are not reacting to each other. They walk past each other and they don't acknowledge each other, and they don't act in a way like you would expect this to be a tight-knit community that protects their own and that spots danger when they see it, right? Because they are traveling in like 1790 Scotland, like in the Highlands. They are on their own. They have to look out for each other because nobody else will, right?
I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt here. I thought
Why?
they were trying to make that feel like I thought they were trying to make that feel like a profound moment, because it felt like they were trying to say, okay, these guys hold so much weight and they just scream danger.
That just makes it more likely that people will react. And
Yeah, and
their defenses go up and they gather together and they maybe grab some weapons or something. Or there's like a big negotiation where Sugar Daddy talks to the boss performer, and they try to kind of figure each other out and what the other wants and whatever. That just doesn't really happen.
This scene is screaming confusing. However, because there was so many, the scene was very silent and there was a lot of different shots. So that's like, when like films try and make a film seem like it's really cool, sick, profound, deep. So I felt that is what the intention was. If you guys understand what I'm saying, like, with like, I keep mentioning like artists with their paintings where in reality you're not really seeing much from this painting. It's just paint splattered on the paper, but people make it seem like this was created by the artistic gods. So I felt like that was similar to what was going on in this scene. It felt like they were trying to make it seem like a tense, deep, powerful moment in the film. I don't know. Yeah, if that's how I took it in terms of why people were acting that way. It didn't work, but that's what I thought they were trying to do.
I think you're giving it too much credit. I think this is an aptitude. So
but I'm not giving it credit though.
So when we are saying it's trying to do something like doing some deep symbolism and trying to be artsy, which implies this is on purpose. I'm not sure it's on purpose. So this director has made one other movie which I have not seen, and it just seems like he's trying, but he does not quite get it right. And I don't know if this was the editing or the budget or bad directing or whatever. I don't know. It's more like the entire movie is like I was harping on about the scene because I could give 5 other examples. And pretty much the entire movie was like this, where everything kind of felt odd and it felt really poorly put together. And like when you're editing, you have to pay attention to stuff like object permanence, right? Like when you don't see something in frame, you still have to keep track of where that character is or where that object is, so that the next time you see it, it makes sense and it lines up and it doesn't contradict each other. And it seems like they simply didn't do this. The way every scene is constructed and the way characters behave and react to each other, it's all very, I don't even know, like calling it stilted is wrong. Calling it amateurish is kind of mean, or meaner than I mean it. It's more like this is not how it works. Like I was reminded of Hellboy last year, where I complained that the director of that movie needs to look up what an establishing shot is, because they didn't use any in that movie, and as a result the entire thing felt really janky and disjointed. And it's fine to ignore kind of standard movie making conventions if you understand why they're there. It's like you have to know the rules before you can break them, and you have to break them with intention. And I didn't feel like this was being done with intention. And I just felt like this is the best they could do. And maybe I'm being overly harsh on this, and maybe some expert in cinematography can walk me through like why this is all fine and good and intentional. I just don't see it. Ultimately, I care about my viewing experience, and my viewing experience was: have you made a movie before? Or have you seen a movie before? Because it's really, really weird.
That's the perfect way to describe it. It was weird. It was a weird experience. I'm trying to determine if it's, like I said, a university film or just a very artsy film created by an established filmmaker that's just kind of like he's got a vision which we just can't see. You know what I'm saying? So
The reviews on this are very split. So the negative reviews kind of more or less echo what I've been saying and what I will say once we get to Tornado. The good ones kind of are hallucinating entire character arcs, and they are just hallucinating entire themes and subplots. It's kind of crazy. It's almost like they're trolling. And I don't know if they saw the same movie as I did or as we did. One of the things you will see in the positive reviews for this is that it mentions a lot about how this is an homage to Japanese cinema and to Kurosawa and to all these Japanese revenge movies and samurai movies and all, and so on. And I don't buy it. Like, I'm sure there are references and stylistic allusions in this that I didn't get because I'm not a connoisseur of Japanese cinema. But I've seen Japanese movies. I've seen a bunch of Kurosawa movies, and I've seen stuff like Lady Snowblood, which is very like Lady Snowblood specifically. It's very similar. It's about this woman who has trained to be a swords fighter, to go on a revenge spree, to go after the people who have wronged her family. It's very similar, just in terms of like it's not the same story at all, but it's like drinking from the same well, right? So I imagine if this is an homage, it's an homage to something like Lady Snowblood. And I didn't feel like I wasn't getting Lady Snowblood, seeing it kind of just as a movie. I understood what characters were doing, and I understood the flow from scene to scene, and I understood character motives and all of that. And that is simply not quite here. And I do not buy that I'm just not getting it because you have to have seen the top 50 Japanese revenge movies to understand this. And that is why it's really an amazing movie. The height of pretentiousness I saw was they called a jidaigeki movie, which just means period piece. Anything set in the past, like any Japanese movie set in the past, is jidaigeki, and I might mispronounce it slightly, but this is just covering over the fact that yes, this is set in the past. That's all this is. It's not specifically a genre. It's not like an artistic reference. It's inspired by Japanese filmmaking, and it's set in the past. And that's all this is. I was kind of like doubting my perception of reality as I was reading those reviews, because like you are making stuff up just because you want to like this movie, is my opinion. Like, so I'm not saying it's about anybody who likes this movie. I'm just saying these specific reviewers were making stuff up to make to justify giving this movie a good review. And it's crazy.
Yeah. I definitely understand where you're coming from. But so you guys didn't enjoy it all, kind of like the cultural fusion of, Western, Japanese, and, like I said, set in British 1790s. I think that's the times I was set in. So did you appreciate it? Because like I said, my positives for this film is more to do so with appreciation. And there were times where I was engaged, don't get it twisted. However, it's more so to do with the appreciation of the film, mainly to do with the premise and obviously the themes that they kind of like I said, the cultural fusions that they brought together of Western, Japanese culture in its setting. So
when did this happen in the movie?
In terms, let's say there's like a checkbox. In terms of the culture of Britain, is mainly to do with the setting.
But the clash between the two, or the differences, or the conflict is never made a topic of the movie. We can pivot into my next complaint, which is Tornado herself. There's this scene in the beginning where she's training sword fighting with her father. He gets called a samurai. I don't know if he really is one, but he's a trained swords fighter. He's trying to teach her, and she's bored. She's rejecting it. She's playing with the sword while he's trying to show her like the stances and whatever. That kind of indicates to me like they've been in this country for a while, and she is not in touch with her Japanese roots, right? Like that's kind of what's being communicated in that scene and other scenes like it. And same thing when they're doing the puppet show, she does not want to be there. She's completely unengaged. She does not care about the story that's being told. She does it because she has to. And you might think that this is because she's kind of assimilated into her, like maybe she's been in Britain for most of her life or for several years, and she identifies with that more than with Japanese culture or something. I kept waiting for that to come up and to matter. And I didn't notice that happening. I did not see a scene or like a sequence in which Tornado does this. Like she never goes into town and is much more at home there than with her father or whatever. Or, she could have had like a Scottish boyfriend or something. You know what I mean? Like any number of different things to show that she's torn between these two cultures. The tagline of this movie is, am I a samurai? Am I a killer? And that invokes the idea of identity as well, right? This whole idea that, first of all, if they really are nobility, like if like a samurai isn't just somebody with a sword, it's like a knight. And like it's actually, you come from a noble family and you kind of are born into this kind of warrior role, right? That's what a samurai is. It does not seem to matter to their identity at all. That's what they are, if they are that. We don't really see what she does identify with. If the point of the movie is like on paper, right? If you just watch the trailer and you kind of stand next to the theater as it's playing and you kind of hear some things, right? You might assume that this movie is about somebody who's torn between two cultures and she has this identity crisis, and then when her father is killed, that is when she decides what is really important to her, and it is her family, it is her roots, it is her Japanese identity, her Japanese culture, and that is when she becomes the samurai, and that is when she picks up the sword and goes for this revenge killing, right? Does not happen in the movie. I don't believe it. I don't believe that at any point there is this internal conflict where she is torn between two things, and or maybe she leans towards identifying with the country she's in as opposed to where she came from, and the death of her father is what snaps her back or something like that. That is simply absent from the movie, in my opinion, because I kept expecting it, I kept looking for it, and I couldn't find it. Her father is killed by the bandits, and so she picks up a sword and goes to kill them. Except we established a couple of scenes before this that she is not a skilled swords fighter. That he's been trying to teach her, she's been rejecting him. So why is she suddenly so good? You know what I mean? Like, it just does not fit together. There's simply not a character arc here. There's simply not a journey here or a trajectory. And that appears to be, at least in terms of messaging and in terms of the presentation, that appears to be the whole point of the movie. And for that to be missing is shocking. And that is why I'm calling it the worst movie of the year.
Was it promised though? Because
I think so. So what does am I a samurai, am I killer? What does this mean? If it doesn't,
that was near the end.
it's the tagline, it's in the trailer, and it's kind of the big it's kind of the big pivotal character moment. So this is like the key, like this is kind of the bottom line.
Yeah.
So it is about her the self-discovery and her essentially resolving this ambiguity or this conflict within her and choosing her roots.
Okay, yeah.
Am I crazy?
No,
Am I reading too
no.
much into this? Did I fall asleep and miss a scene? What's going on?
No, I wasn't even aware that was the tagline in the movie, because then that kind of recontextualizes everything. Because again, there wasn't really anything like that in the movie. There wasn't that identity crisis. There was the element of her rejecting her father's teaching and kind of being fed up, but that's just her being a rebellious teen. But again, if you're going to reject it, then there needs to be something that you're almost like pulling towards, or something that is kind of the opposite that you're leaning towards. But in this movie, there wasn't anything like that. It was that she just was fed up of doing the same things over and over again with her father. That doesn't really scream the whole "Am I a samurai? Am I a killer?" question within her, and like trying to answer that and trying to sort of find oneself in that. Like I said, I'm not here to defend this movie too much, because it's just borderline acceptable or sort of borderline good. But I don't know, like, what other character arcs that you sort of that you saw was in the reviews. I do feel like there was like something in Tornado, not to do with identity, but just to do with realization and sort of understanding of sort of consequences, action and consequences. I think she kind of went on that particular journey. But outside of that, I don't know, there wasn't really much else to grab onto in terms of character and character development. And I said I liked Sugarman's son just because he was different from the rest, and he wasn't just the generic henchman of the villain, and that he had his reasons. He had sort of valid reasons, because you kind of looked at the other people that were in the group, and you can kind of see that they were like a little bit weaker or a little bit more timid. And you had the guy that ended up losing the gold as well, who was a little bit useless, but they were all getting equal cuts. So I don't know. I just kind of found some enjoyment in that story. Not that it was executed super well, and there was like inconsistencies in it, and there wasn't really much to grasp at. But again, when you're in a movie like this, and you're just trying to enjoy the experience for the sake of enjoying the experience. I thought it was okay enough for me not to hate it.
And I think the Clash of Worlds, kind of like that theme, was all right too. To kind of, you know what I'm saying, like even though they're all in the same country, it's just culturally so much good. Like, there's just so much going on. You know what I'm saying? So many differences, and just kind of like seeing the clash is kind of like obviously.
What's the clash?
Well,
At
you
what
got
point is there a conflict between the two cultures?
obviously the father is a representation of that. Obviously, when he's against people actually from there, even though they did have a Western vibe. The obviously you see Japanese culture with. I'm sure this is not accurate, but obviously you saw when obviously the father put down his sword, kind of saw like just like I'm just gonna, in terms of what the director I think was trying to show, was kind of like Japanese culture against obviously people natives from there, and how that kind of clash, which led to obviously the father's demise. Even though there was another side to that Japanese culture, which was the samurai side. So in a way, that's not actually. So he wasn't trying to bring out that side. So let me take that back. So he was trying to, because obviously if he was going to kind of like show his Japanese side, he would have done what the daughter done, and took out the sword, and like she said she wants to kill all of them, but he was like, no, 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 let me kind of make them see that we're from here as well, that let me try and not try and show our culture, bring our culture, let me kind of like, what's the word I'm trying to do, let me fit in a way. So that's how he put the sword down. Do you know what I'm saying? If that makes sense. But obviously that led to his demise, and obviously the daughter resulted to what she knew best. But then if that's what, that's pretty, I wouldn't say that's pretty smart, but because at the end, right, because a killer is what those guys were, those natives were in that country. So that's why I think she asked the question, like, am I actually a samurai? Because of what her father done, technically in his eyes, is what like samurais would do. Because he even said, there was a line where he said, I could kill you, but I'm not going to. And he put down his sword. So then that's kind of like telling us, okay, that's how samurais, especially within the environment that they are, would behave. So I think that's why she asked the question at the end, am I a samurai or am I just a killer like them, the natives? Or because if I was a samurai, then I should have responded the way that my dad would have responded.
Yeah, I'm not sure I buy that. Like a samurai is a warrior, right? And protecting your property and your family from bandits is one of the things a samurai does. And so he de-escalates by putting down his sword, not because that is the samurai way, but because they are vastly outnumbered. And he's trying to de-escalate. And as far as he's concerned, I'm not sure if he knows about the gold at this point. I'm not
Yeah, he
entirely
does.
sure if
He
he does.
saw his daughter hide something.
I
Yeah.
was gonna say if he's the one that hid it in the tree, then I'm sure he should have known about the gold.
Yeah, okay. But, he's not trying to pick a fight, right? And he's just trying to get out of this alive because they're outnumbered.
But he did say you can kill them, and the daughter was obviously ready to kill them as well. So that kind of does tell us that he could have killed them, though.
Yeah, but again, I just don't see this as like a cultural difference. Like, this is the samurai way on the one hand, and the Scottish way or the European way on the other. I just do not see it. I just saw somebody who's being, waylaid like on the road and is trying to de-escalate, is trying to get out of it alive because he still doesn't actually have a fight to pick. Like, that's what I saw.
My question, to kind of move on from this, my question is, why did we not like the villain in this movie? Because I thought he was, for the type of movie that we're in. And bear in mind, if we're not in, blockbuster Hollywood movie, we're in this kind of indie film world that was out here. And I don't think he was like menacing, but I thought that they had an element of presence to them, especially when they were like kind of like walking and you hear the boots and they were like, making sure that you could hear like the sound effects of the boots walking and stuff like that. You could kind of like, feel the intimidation from there, and you can sort of feel why she'd be running away. It didn't make sense why they weren't running, but for style choice, that worked for me. Again, I like the ruthlessness. Like, even though he knew all of these people, he was all about his gold. He was all about his money. So even though he knew her father, because he believed that he had the money and they were hiding it, he killed him. The circus people burnt down the carriages, even to the point with a little boy. Because again, a lot of movies protect kids and don't have them killed. And I know in this one they kind of not fake out a little bit, but they delay it a bit. But where his henchman just shoots him in the leg and sort of cripples him, and he later sort of dies from those wounds. I just thought he was, for this movie anyways, the right level of menacing and the right level of ruthlessness, I would say, over anything. And how he just like killed his, I think it was his son, how he killed his son for his betrayal and for killing another one of his gang members. And it's just like, he doesn't care. Like, even though like I've raised you from a kid, you crossed the line and you crossed me to do with my money, you have to die. So that's what I enjoyed anyways out of the film.
I don't have any real problems with Sugar Daddy. It's like he's the right amount of menacing and cruel, and he has a very clear motivation, right? He pulled off this robbery, and he cannot simply walk away from a life-changing amount of gold. Like, that all makes sense, and that's all fine.
It's just a film, so there's nothing wrong with his character. It's just a film, which is the main problem. So I think if you were to put him in any other movie with like I said, a better script that was just like cohesive, his performance is fine. It's just a film. That's all I think the problem is.
Throughout the entire thing, I was just waiting for a point. I was waiting for Tornado. Like, this should be like a character study of who is Tornado and what will she do in this situation, right? What choice will she make? And I thought that was simply not there. And that's kind of the bottom line. And everything else, like, I think it looks nice for the most part. Like, these whole shots of the Scottish Highlands and the juxtaposition of the Highlands and the samurai, and it's visually interesting. It's not ugly. I was just kept waiting for something interesting to happen and just didn't. And we don't even get like the right amount of spectacle. Like, if we got some cool sword fights out of this, or if we got some great kills or something, then I would have said, okay, like, this is not the strongest story, but I'm having a good time here. And that also didn't. Like, she kind of walks up to people and and stabs them.
The action scene was doo garbage, but I just gave them the benefit of the doubt and said, okay, yeah, it's the budget, that's why. But still, it could have.
Yeah, like, with that budget and that scale and that level of experience, I can understand why they wouldn't make some big spectacle out of this. But then you need to do something else, and that's something should have been a character focus. Take us on a journey of what space Tornado is in and what choice she makes, and that should be the interesting part. And I just simply did not get this. And I think the reason I'm so upset about this is, like, this had so much potential. Like, this is like, there was this movie last year, I think it's called Into Darkness, which is like this Neolithic horror movie, which is like a group of like a Stone Age tribe is migrating into a new area, and they encounter this sinister presence. And the entire movie is filmed in a fictional language to kind of underline this point that we are in a different time and place now. I watched that movie and I went into it with high expectations, because like, this is like a small movie. It's got a cool idea. It's gonna do something interesting with it. And then they kind of bungled it in the end, kind of in the execution. And this is kind of similar, where if you like read like statements from the director, he says, "Oh, I'm this big fan of samurai movies and of Japanese revenge movies, and I wanted to make a Scottish version of this." It's like, would have been cool if you did. Like if this was actually like the tropes of Japanese revenge movies or samurai movies filtered through Scottish sensibilities, or like a Scottish historical or cultural context or something. Then, and if I just didn't get it, then it's always possible, but I'm just not sure, because I didn't see something going on where I said, okay, I don't get this, I don't understand why this is happening, but I can see that they're doing something. And that is the part that was missing. And for that reason, I'm pretty confident in saying I think this is just not there. The disappointment here is so big because you can imagine so many things. You can imagine what to do with this premise or the setup or this basic plot. There's just so much. And for it to do so little is really the part that annoyed me, because I feel like I can deal with like a bad movie, but if I feel like a movie's just wasting my time as I'm watching it, that is where I get kind of upset about it, or where I take it personally. Because you are going through so much effort and time and money to make this movie. Why are you not doing something cool or interesting or thoughtful or pushing some kind of boundary, or like I don't think anybody has ever made like a movie with these ingredients. So why not do something with it? I don't know.
Danny, was that your last thought, or
No, no, that was just like the reason why I'm giving this movie such a hard time. If like a mid to big budget action spectacle movie is kind of mediocre, I can kind of understand that. I can understand, okay, who was involved in making this, and clearly this is like an IP product, right? And this is not really somebody's passion project, but this sounds like somebody's passion project. It sounds like somebody who really got invested in this idea of a samurai in the Scottish Highlands. This is not assembly line nonsense. Like this is not churned out for the money or for the merchandise or something. This feels like a genuine passion project. And for it to be so hollow, ultimately it's just a movie, right? And I simply did not have a good time watching it. That's kind of the beginning and end of it, but it's more like the idea of what could have been. That's kind of what like makes me I don't want to call upset. I don't like I'm not angry at this movie. It's more like why? Like why could you not do more?
Well, last thoughts.
I think Daniel's made me come down a little bit on the movie, just because I
Give me
think you
another
point out
hour and
a
you will
lot.
be right there with me.
No, I think you point out a lot of like obvious flaws that are in the movie and how it's sort of poorly made and how a lot of things weren't really well thought through. And I don't know how much time they had, how much production time they had to sort of piece everything together, or sort of how much time to like they had to like really pen the story in this. But it definitely felt like there was a lot missing, or there was a lot more that could have been done to make this better than what it was. But at the same time, I still found some type of enjoyment, some type of entertainment from this movie, and enough to sort of be overall a little bit positive, more positive in it than 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 Daniel on this. I didn't have too much problem with the characters. I didn't have too much problem with Tornado herself. I kind of see a little bit what they wanted to do with sort of the whole action consequences aspect of her character. The whole identity side of things was completely missing, and I think they could have. I wouldn't say it was completely missing, but it wasn't. It was very underdeveloped, and they could have spent a lot more time in this movie really sort of fleshing that out, especially because there's so many scenes where it's like drawn out where they're just kind of like chasing her, or sort of there's a lot of waste of time in this movie in certain parts. Overall, I think I'm just like fine with this movie. I don't hate it. It's not like The Surfer. I came out The Surfer and I was like, what the hell did I watch? And we had complete different opinions on that one. This one, I can appreciate that it's not the best made movie. It's not well crafted. It's not even the best story at all, but it just kind of does enough for me to be slightly more on the positive side than the negative side.
I feel like I'm gonna have similar opinions to both of you. I definitely do hear where you're both coming from. I feel like my last thoughts kind of agree with what you're both saying, because I do agree with Daniel's main point where it's like it's just there was really no story and it just feels like disjointed. Like what you would wish for to happen wasn't really done as well. But at the same time, I do agree with her, because like I did find like I didn't necessarily have issues with Coco's character, because I think in terms of performance wise, it was good. So that's what kind of got me like left me engaged. I feel like performance, they were like all fine. However, like there wasn't really a story, and just the way that certain themes and just like cultures were presented, it left question marks as to what is this film like? What was the purpose of this film? But like I said, my appreciation, it made my film likes for this film mainly comes from the appreciation and the fact that he did a wacky idea. And like I said, the performance, yeah, and I do feel like it was disjointed as well. Like it didn't feel like a cohesive story. I thought it was done purposely like that. However, when it ended, I was like, I'm gonna give it a 5.5. I don't want to give it a 6, but I'm gonna give it a 5.5 out of 10. It's above average.
I
Above
think
average.
5.5 is what you gave Madam Web.
No way. I gave Madam Web 5.5. Damn. To be fair, they're
And
kind of like in this same
and
ball.
back then we challenged you to name a 2 out of 10 movie, and I think you still owe us one.
Oh crap. Alright, cool. I'm definitely gonna think of some. What was one film that I hated? I swear I've hated a film this year. Oh, I
This
just
was
couldn't.
Joker 2.
Joker 2, yeah, Joker 2. I'm sure Joker 2 was a. What did I give Joker 2?
I don't remember, but it was lower than that.
Yeah, yeah, Joker 2 was abysmal. To this day, I'm gonna stick to that. It was abysmal. So this Tornado is definitely better than Joker 2. No one can tell me nothing about that. Okay.
How did you give a rating?
I will give it a 5.1 out of 10, which means it's just more positive than it is negative.
Yeah, so for me, it's basically the premise gives it goodwill and gets my attention, but ultimately it has to deliver. It has to actually do something, and I think this is missing a compelling story for Tornado. I think it's really poorly put together in terms of how the scenes are constructed and how the story is told and how characters are characterized. Like it would completely waste its premise and setting. It's just overall vastly disappointing. So for that reason, that's a 1 out of Lady Snowblood.
Alright, guys. Looks like I'm the only one left here. No, I'm joking. But, alright, guys. Thank you very much for tuning into today's discussion. It wasn't really, it was kind of a debate, but I'd say it was more so of a discussion.
So if you've made it this far into the conversation, if you liked what you've seen, please tell a friend. And if you hated what we've said, please tell an enemy.
You heard it here first, guys. We'll catch you next week. Au revoir.
Bye bye.